Hey gang, in the last video, we learned how to organize our expenses into an easy spreadsheet. So today, let's have some fun and start visualizing that data using charts and graphs. And I say fun because some of us enjoy this type of digital tinkering. But even if you're skeptical, give this a shot anyway. Because the bigger point to visualizing your expenses at this step is that it can literally help you to see them in a new way that you couldn't before. Okay, here I have our expense tracker. So our expenses are sitting in this bottom table here, which, if you remember from the last video, we exported from our online credit cards and bank accounts and have already categorized using this dropdown. Then the summary of our spending is here towards the top, which shows our income and our expenses broken apart by category and automatically calculated using the data in the table below. If you haven't done this step yet and otherwise don't have your expenses neatly organized in this way, then I highly encourage you to pause here, check out the linked video first, and then come back to us. We'll be here. But otherwise, let's assume you're good to go. Now, while this summary up top is great for seeing exactly where our money goes, it's less great for seeing how these numbers compare to each other. That's one big reason why we're going to add a chart to this setup, so that we can see these numbers in a different way that might give us more helpful context around our spending. Now, before we do anything, let's make a tweak to our existing expense formula. While the negative numbers make sense for how we're totaling our net up here, they make less sense when it comes to visualizing. And some charts won't be able to support these numbers because they're negative. So as a pre-step, let's make sure all of our expense amounts become positive numbers instead. We're going to do this by quickly editing the formula in here to return the absolute value of these totals. And if anyone out there doesn't remember what absolute value refers to from school, basically, it's a way of taking a negative number and returning the positive version of it. That's probably not what the actual literal mathematical definition of it is, but that's how I learned it in school, and that's how I'm teaching it to you all now. So the good news is that with this formula, all it takes is adding the absolute value function to the beginning of our sum if. That looks like this. Another way to think about it is that we're taking our absolute value function, and inside of those parentheses, we're telling it to calculate whatever the value is of the sum if function that we worked on in the last video. So now let's click enter. You can see that our formula changed the previous value from negative to positive. Now let's do this for the rest of our categories. See, totally that would be easy. Okay, so now that we've prepped our numbers, let's get into the charts. Let's start by adding a bar chart. The simplest way is to highlight our expense table so that we're only highlighting our expense categories. Remember, not our income, so that we get our total spending reflected in this bar chart. This will provide the X and Y axes for our chart, which, to bring it back to middle school math yet again, is required to put together a bar chart. Now, in the Google toolbar menu, I'll click Insert Chart. Okay, so Google gave me a waterfall chart by default. If you're doing this on your own, I'm not totally sure if you would get the same chart by default because when I've done this in the past, I've gotten the bar chart first. So let's change our chart type here, if it's not already, from waterfall to column. There we go. That makes a lot more sense to me. As you can see in our chart, we're showing all of our spending categories at the bottom x-axis and our total spending per category in our y-axis. If this is your first time using Google Charts though, let's just take a quick look at the chart settings here in our chart editor. So as we just established, our chart type is where we decide what type of visualization we want to do. For our data range here, B6 to C13 refers to our highlighted cell range, basically what we clicked on to include in the chart before we actually added it to the page. And now here is where we get more specific. Our x-axis, B6 to B13, refers to our categories, like we knew was going to happen. And our series, aka our y-axis, is everything from C6 through C13. Now, let's make some quick changes in the Customize section to really make this chart our own. Feel free to play around with these settings on your own time to customize the appearance of your chart, but I'm just going to make a few very specific tweaks. In the Axis and Titles section, I'm going to change the chart title to be something more relevant. And in the series section, I'm going to change the color of our column bars from blue to red. I also want to show the values for each of those bars so that I can see the amount on top of each bar. So I'll check off data labels to show those values. And actually, let's make this a little darker. That's better. And actually, my chart title is a little big, so let's change the font and make that smaller. You guys can probably tell it's really bothering me too that my title is getting intercepted by our housing value. So let me see if I can figure out a way to make the visuals of this work better. All right, that's a lot better. Okay, gang, so this bar chart is done, and it's a great way to see how your spending compares across categories. Let's now add a pie chart or a donut chart to show this data in a different way. So we'll do the same steps as before, highlighting our expense categories and inserting a new chart. See, this time it gave me the bar chart by default. I don't know, Google Sheets can be weird sometimes, but let's look for the donut chart specifically and select that. Okay, gang, now this pie chart is showing the same data as our bar chart and our expense summary table. But it's most helpful for showing us how our spending looks in relation to our total spending. So whereas our bar chart was a good way to compare spending across categories, our pie chart or our donut chart is also a good way to do that, but it's better for seeing each category as a percentage or a chunk of our total spending, which basically represents the entire donut amount. Okay, gang, so let's talk about our chart setup for this one. As you can see, our labels are coming from B6 to B13, which represents, once again, our categories and our highlighted cell range. And our values are coming from C6 to C13, which represent the amounts. Now, our donut chart is only showing our spending as a percentage of our total, but I want to see the data labels here or the values as well. So let's go into the Customize section. And let's find the spot where we have to make that change. For what it's worth, this is a little confusing because value and percentage you would think would show both at the same time. but we actually have to click value here in order to see both. So just some Google Sheets weirdness that we can just overlook for this video. But okay, this is exactly what I wanted to be able to see. You can also change the color of individual pie slices here, which we won't do because we could be here all day doing that for fun. I'm once again going to change my chart title to be something a bit more relevant. All right, that's a lot better. Okay, gang, there's one more chart here that would be helpful, and that's a chart where we can compare the amount of money we're making against what we're spending. Now, the easiest way to do this is to have a section that shows just our income total and our expense total. I'm going to add a row underneath our income category that totals all of our expenses. And I'm just going to use a simple sum function to do that. And now I'm going to reformat our table a bit just to make this section a little more distinct from the rest. All right, now for this chart, let's select our income and expense total rows and insert a chart to compare the two. Let's make this a column chart again, because for me, that's easiest. And okay, to more easily show that this is an income and expense comparison, the final new thing we're going to do is change the color for each of these individual columns. I'll click out of our column to select the full bar chart and do the rest of the tweaks that we went over in this video. And there we have it. Now we can arrange our charts on this page or a separate tab if we want, just to make it fit a bit better within our sheet. And we're good to go. So remember, gang, when you have your expenses tracked in a spreadsheet like this, charts are one way you can really help yourself make sense of your spending. Especially if you're a visual learner and someone who learns best by getting hands-on themselves, this can give you a much more well-rounded picture of your financial state than simply reading a credit card statement can. If this video was helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And for more tips, be sure to subscribe. Thanks.